So good afternoon. Welcome to the Métis Urban and Capital Housing Month presentation. Today I'll be presenting the role of the housing resource worker and the impact it has on the tenant experience in our affordable and subsidized housing. First, I'd like to start with a Treaty 6 acknowledgement. So as we gather here today, we acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 territory, which includes but is not limited to the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, and homeland of the Métis. We respect this place's First Nations and Métis ancestors and reaffirm our relationship with one another. So today I'd like to discuss what a housing resource worker is, housing resource worker program goals, the process of accessing assistance from the housing resource worker, a success story of our tenants, the important work for the affordable and subsidized housing providers, and our Indigenous framework. So what is a housing resource worker? So what we do is the housing resource worker is someone who works to identify and address the gaps between a tenant's well-being and maintaining stability in the Métis and urban and capital housing programs. We meet tenants where they are at and identify their strengths and their resilience. We guide them through the process of learning to help themselves and to see their problems as challenges rather than hopeless dead ends. The resource worker carefully builds a relationship with the tenant, which allows for a more proactive solutions to things they might be facing. So we offer to connect them to supports that can meet needs and address challenges or break down barriers. We connect them to services where they can learn more about self-care, family issues, learn about healthy relationships, build skills, set goals, safety planning, education, employment, and financial literacy. But the most important part is probably the connection that we build with them. So as a housing resource worker, we try to build on their strengths and ensure that they have the tools to succeed and overcome some of the barriers. And we help create a strong support system through ourselves and through some of the supports we manage to connect them to. So some of our goals are to ensure that the tenant feels supported and is informed about resources available to make their rental experience more successful, to get the tenant to a place of confident independence and redirect the focus on their strengths rather than their trials, to educate the tenant on the importance of self-care, good choices, and navigating the social support systems. So a lot of our tenants are coming from places where navigating social services and community resources is kind of something that they haven't really done before. So we will guide them and walk with them through those processes, including like filling out forms and stuff like that, navigating government programs and stuff. And those forms can be pretty complex even for me. So we kind of help with that. We educate the tenant. We try to promote growth and perseverance in the westernized society while reigniting and maintaining their cultural roots. So we are a little different that way. So the process of receiving our help. So there's hundreds of tenants in our programs. So I'm the first and only one right now. It's a new role, but something that I'm working on building is trying to build a foundation. But the process for receiving help is we'll get a referral from our tenant relations officer if they feel that there is a tenant in need of extra support or assistance. And then I would make contact with the tenant. So then we would try to connect them to resources, and depending on what the challenge is, whether it's for mental health, financial supports, social supports, whether they're struggling with addictions, employment, education, just trying to get them to other agencies where they might be able to find what they need. And then we follow up. So sometimes staying motivated can be difficult. Um, we'll call them and follow up and see like, hey, how's it going? Are you following through with some of the goals that we set for you and stuff like that? So with our support, one of our success stories is one tenant in particular. I'm going to let them remain anonymous, but they went from a lot of financial insecurity and a lack of social and emotional support to financial stability and connection. And they're very grateful and they're thriving and they're doing amazing in our program and their arrears are getting caught up. And they're just really happy that this service was available. They continue to check in and let us know how things are going, and they're, doing really well. So they've turned around as a tenant. There was someone who was a little bit more difficult to work with for some of the TROs, but with our support, they were able to succeed and be a little more successful. So the importance of this work for subsidized and affordable housing is we address a lot of the barriers to maintaining housing. A lot of those barriers come from difficulties with mental health, because there's a lot of historical and systemic trauma for Indigenous people, not just for First Nations, but for Métis, Inuit, even non-status Indigenous people. And that has barriers in how you can function or can't function. There's addiction. So a lot of our tenants in our lower income housing, some of them self-medicate to cope, numb or avoid. Many people struggling with addictions will often make unintentionally irresponsible financial decisions. So we can connect them to supports that can address some of those issues. And then there's also domestic and family violence that can take a lot of their energy and focus, as well as financial resources, because you never know, like you might not want to pay rent in case you got to leave, in case you got to run, or again, like you go back up to addictions, you're using that money to cope with your situation rather than, paying rent and things like that. And then there's also a lack of access and opportunity, or even comprehension on how to navigate the employment and education systems. So that can actually hold people back from being successful. So it is really important to have us as a support if you are having those kind of challenges as a tenant. So our housing framework and supports are designed with the Indigenous experience in mind. We connect our tenants to emotional, mental, spiritual supports, financial supports, social and community supports. We take into account the socioeconomic factors that may be interfering with home ownership and offer solutions like repayment plans, referrals to agencies that can assist with financial resources should arrears be accumulated. So I guess this would fall in line with a lot of reconciliation and bringing our people back up to equality where there's definitely disparities. Our programs are designed to kind of eliminate those disparities, or try to. And does anybody have any questions? I can take some Q&As now. Oh, Okay, so Jillian, how does your role fit in with the rest of the organization? So my role with the rest of how my role fits in with the rest of the organization is I fill in the gaps. So this is as I said earlier, a new program. They've never had a resource worker in the Métis and urban and capital housing before. So sometimes we have tenants who accumulate arrears, and I'm able to connect with other agencies that can offer financial resources to cover those based on low income status or um, things out of their control, like the power is going up like exponentially. A lot of people are not, might be working, but they have a one-time chance to go and get assistance. So I would help them connect that. I would refer them to, say, Bissell, like they have a bridging, well, I think it's bridging connections. Forgive me if that's wrong, but they might have resources for that tenant. So I'm a bridge basically as myself. That's how I fit in. It's new, so we're just creating this role now. Um, how many tenants do we? Okay. How many tenants do we currently support? Hundreds. So I kind of just go on a referral basis. So I'll wait for a TRO or a housing manager to approach me and say this tenant needs help. So far, I think I've probably worked with about 100 different tenants so far since starting, and a lot of them kind of just take the resources and get themselves connected, and I don't really need to follow up with too many, but there are some who need a little more help. Well, I check in with. It's like a very subjective, so it's a case by case basis. How would someone how would someone apply to live in one of the buildings? What are the requirements? You would just have to fill out an application. You could either come in and pick one up, or you could apply online at métishousing.ca. They do have online applications, or that you could download, fill out, and then basically you just have to have either Métis, First Nations, or Inuit status. I do believe they are starting to take applications for non-Indigenous as well. So you would just apply online. Do you specifically offer cultural connections or support? Personally, myself, I have, well, I'm First Nations from Treaty 8 territory. I can speak Cree. I know some things, but ourself, we don't have the ability to do that directly, but we do have like a referral that we can make to other organizations and agencies that would be able to offer them cultural programming or support groups or events. And I would just direct them if they were interested in connecting to something culturally. Jolyn, so this is so appreciated, Victoria. How does your team support prospective tenants who are applying in smaller centers, example, Medicine Hat? Specifically, can housing support workers like myself out of the local friendship center connect with you to support a client's housing application? Yeah, definitely. You could advocate. I myself don't really process any of the applications. They would still have to go through the regular channels of applying for housing. However, when there's a higher need, we tend to look at those applications a little deeper. That would be something you would have to maybe talk about with reception or a housing manager, because I don't know too much about that. Whether we take housing referrals from other agencies or not. But that is a good question. So that's something I'll find out. Thank you. Do you provide any cultural supports to help people? Okay. Do you provide any cultural supports to help people to experience a stronger sense of belonging while stabilizing their housing? Yeah, we could definitely connect you to culturally appropriate organizations, a lot of Indigenous-led organizations in the city that are amazing. So we would definitely support that. I would be able to connect anybody to that really, if they were interested. What third-party agencies do you refer to for supports? So we can go, we can make referrals to anywhere really that's willing to accept us as a referral. So because the role is new, I'm still building those interagency connections to be recognized as a legitimate resource myself. So we're still bridging those kind of connections, but I will often just make a phone call and they'll be like, yeah, just send a referral letter. So I've had I've spoken to places like the Today Center, the Bissell Center, Bentero, different places. I was recently at a conference and met hundreds of different agencies that now also have my business card. So hopefully there'll be more networking going on so that we can recognize each other as agencies that would accept each other's referrals. I'm new to my job, so I'd like to know what is the process to make a referral to Métis Capital Housing and what kind of housing and services does Métis Capital Housing offer? So we have a bunch of different programs in Métis Capital Housing and urban housing. And then we also have a seniors and disabilities apartment called the Renaissance Tower. And then the FRP, which is a family reunification home program, and then the Reaching Home program, which is specifically for Métis. They can connect people with housing resources or supports or getting into housing, helping pay for damage, deposit, getting furniture, similar to kind of what I do, but they have direct funds that they can access. So yeah, that's kind of the different programs that we have. Reason applying online. Is this a new option? The standard application form says fax, email. The option to apply online would be. Yeah, there should be an option to apply online. Unless that's been taken down and I haven't been informed, but there should be an online application and then the ability to upload documents or photocopies. I would like to connect with you and get more information on your role. I met with Denise this morning. Would love to connect with you. Rochelle, absolutely. You can definitely give me a call. I will be available pretty much for the rest of the day. So yeah, we should definitely connect. Date. I do see the option for email at the bottom form version. Yeah, Jolene, if it's yeah, there should be an option there. So I'm glad you found it. Hey, Jenna. I would also like to know about your process. What kind of services options do you offer that separate you from other housing? I was wondering for Indigenous clients, can you talk about how your focus approach is different, beneficial versus non-Indigenous housing options? So I think the way that we're different from other housing programs and non-Indigenous housing programs is we do offer, we do have the prerequisite of having Indigenous identity and status, and like Métis, First Nations. I guess there's non-status for Indigenous as well, and Inuit. So that part is different. And the fact that we reach in, because there isn't really a housing program that will call in and check on you, or an organization that talks amongst themselves and says, hey, I really think this tenant needs some help. Do you think you could reach out to them? And we reach out rather than the tenant having to come in and, ask for help, because sometimes that's difficult, especially as an Indigenous person myself. I think asking for help was probably the hardest thing. It wasn't until somebody reached in and said, hey, I know you're struggling. How can I help? That I was kind of like started to feel safer to get those supports. So I think that is different, and that's more familial, that's more collective. The kind of how Indigenous people do it, like we wrap around each other, right? We're not so individualistic, we're more familial. And I think that separates us a lot from non-Indigenous housing programs. And I think that's it for questions. I don't know if I'm still sharing my screen here. Hope not. Let's see. Is there anybody else? No? Oh, how long is your waiting list, especially for seniors? Our waiting list, it's difficult to tell. I don't have that kind of information, but you could always call and ask the front desk at our 1-800 number here on the screen. I don't know if you guys can still see that. Can you still see that? Okay. Okay. No, I took it down. Oh my goodness. Okay. Hopefully everything went okay. Any other questions? Yeah, I look forward to talking to you too, Rochelle. Yeah, so you can reach me directly. My direct line is 587-855-6461. And my extension is 1107. And then I also have my mobile, which is 780-233-7148. And then email is victoria.halcrow@métishousing.ca. And thank you for letting me do this presentation. This was really a huge new experience for me, and a good learning experience too. And it was great talking to or answering questions. Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Glenda, what kind of supports do you offer your clients? We have all kinds. So we can offer connections to mental health supports, um, family supports, support groups, senior support. We can connect them also to legal support. So if they're dealing with police in court, we can direct them to and send a referral to like Bear Paw or SACE or other organizations. Thank you, Jolene. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you. And I guess that's it. Have a beautiful day, everybody. Thank you for coming. And I look forward to connecting with anybody who's interested in connecting. Can I send my email? If I can figure it out, I absolutely will send my contact information. I don't have the ability to do any chatting. I can't fill out any chat stuff here. Let's see if I can write anything. Let's see. I'll just add my email in a response to anonymous attendee and see if everybody else can see it. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for attending my presentation.